Welcome to the Calm Mom Podcast, the show for ambitious women ready to get off the hot mess express. I know you've got a lot going on. You work so hard, you're raising an incredible family, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. I'm your host, Michelle Grosser. I'm a certified master life coach, attorney, wife, and mom. And years ago, I was right where you are. I was running a busy law practice while raising a family, and I was on the fast track to burnout. I thought I just needed to be more organized or have better routines, but it was learning how to heal and regulate my nervous system that expanded my capacity to gracefully hold more of this big, beautiful life. You too are worthy of an extraordinary life in and beyond motherhood. Learning to be a calm, anchoring presence in your home and at work is going to be your superpower. If you're here to do the inner work that brings a sense of calm amidst the chaos, I'm here to join you on that journey. Each time you press play, your growth continues. So let's get at it. Hey, you guys, it's Michelle here. You're listening to the Calm Mom Podcast. Today, I want to talk about how we cope with stress, right? We all have coping mechanisms. We all have coping strategies. That's a good thing, right? It's just important once in a while to take a look at how you're coping with stress and become conscious and aware of your coping strategies, because sometimes these are things that we just do automatically without even realizing it. And then kind of take a look at those coping strategies and ask ourselves, hey, is this way of coping with stress still serving me, right? Because sometimes there are coping strategies that we take on for good reason that serve us well at a certain time. But as we grow and evolve and mature, and we're still doing old coping strategies, those mechanisms might be holding us back from building real resilience to stress. So that's what we're going to jump into today. But before we do that, I would love to ask you guys, if you haven't yet, to just leave the show a 5-star rating and a short review. I love hearing from you. I take your feedback to heart. I show up to this microphone every morning recording, hoping that what I'm putting out there is helpful to you and that it's serving you. And when you leave me feedback, that helps me really tailor the content so that I know that it's what you want and what you need. And it also is how we help get the show in front of other women and get them these same strategies and tools so they can also learn how to regulate their nervous systems, because that's big work and it's important. And I want everyone to know about it. So if you haven't yet, if you could just leave the show a 5-star rating and a short review. Thank you. Okay, so let's kind of start here with coping strategies, because I want to make this really clear. Sometimes coping strategies get a bad rap. But they're good. They're not bad in and of themselves, right? They usually served a real purpose at some point. They helped keep us, feeling safe. They helped keep us regulated during times of stress or during times that were really painful or sad or disappointing or frustrating. But the problem is that sometimes these strategies become kind of rigid, right? And we just go to them and they become a habit, and we develop this neural pathway to that strategy, and it prevents us from adapting. It prevents us from truly building resilience to stress, which is what we want to build, right? We don't want to just avoid and suppress and cover and band-aid, but we want to actually be able to hold and manage stress in a healthy way. So what I want to do now is I want to explore 4 of the biggies, 4 common ways that I see high-achieving women that I work with use to cope with life, to cope with stress, that are actually making us less resilient. So I just kind of want to bring awareness around these. If you find that you tend to run some of these patterns, this is going to be a great tool for you to just grow in that awareness. And then you decide, right? What no longer serves me? What do I decide to change at this point? And then just choose maybe 1 or 2 this week to start to really be intentional about reworking and rewiring. Okay, so coping in general. Coping strategies, basically anything you guys do to reduce or manage your stress or your anxiety, right? Sometimes we have conscious coping mechanisms. If you're someone who, where movement is a big part of your day, or you have stillness practices, or you journal, or you go for, a walk during your lunch break, those are conscious coping strategies, right? I know that if I do this and build it into my daily routine, that it helps me manage my stress and anxiety, right? I notice such a difference. However, on the flip side, oftentimes, we have coping strategies that are not so intentional, right? They're not so conscious. Like maybe you started a certain habit during a really demanding time in your life, right? Maybe, I don't know, maybe you were in like the postpartum phase, or maybe you had a huge work project and it's like you got home from work and you just couldn't wait to like have that happy hour glass of wine because it finally took the edge off and helped you cope with stress in the short term, right? That's a coping strategy that helped your body kind of take the edge off for that season. That habit worked then, and then it kind of sticks around, right? But over time, if we don't take this time intentionally to adapt and reevaluate our coping mechanisms, things that were once helpful for a past version of ourselves can kind of limit our ability to grow. So instead of building resilience, which is really what we want to do, we end up kind of relying on these old coping strategies like crutches. And resilience, you guys, in a nutshell, it's just our body's ability to handle stress effectively and kind of bounce back, right? It's like a flexibility where we can experience a more activated state. We can experience moments in fight or flight, but then we have tools and there's a resilience in our nervous system to not get stuck there, but to kind of come back down to baseline stress level. Okay, so let's talk about strategy number 1 that I see all the time. And I will be the first to raise my hand. When I am not careful and when I am not taking good care of myself and when I get just like caught up, I do this. This is like my go-to, right? And it is a jam-packed schedule. A jam-packed schedule. Guys, a full calendar can feel super productive, right? I look at my calendar and I'm like, wow, I have, 13 coaching sessions this week and I teach my group program and I homeschool in the mornings and I have to record my podcasts for the week and I'm going to create content for my social media and I'm going to plan, the spring launch of Burnout Recovery Blueprints. And I'm going to take my kids to gymnastics and piano class and I'm going to have a date night with my husband. It's like, it's insane. A full calendar can feel super productive. And for so many of us, when we stay busy, myself included, it can ward off anxiety, right? Like there's no downtime. There's no time for me to have to think about anything, feel anything, worry about anything. I'm just like, bam, 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 one thing to the next. And it gives me this false sense of control. And maybe you're the same, right? If I'm humbled and honest, I know that there's a part of looking at my calendar and looking at my planner and all the little checklists and things crossed off. And I'm like, I am a boss. I am needed. I am valuable. I get stuff done. I am accomplishing all the things, right? And that feels good to my ego. And it serves me in that way, right? In these like short bursts, when I'm jam-packed, one thing to the next, it helps my body not dwell on negative things or painful things. And it kind of gives me this structure, especially if I'm prone to procrastination. So if we are intentional about short bursts of busyness, busy schedule, productivity, what have you, I think it can help us get stuff done. Certainly it can help us power through. However, there is a huge downside to being unconsciously caught in this pattern, right? On the hamster wheel for a long time. Chronic busyness, you guys, will cause you to be dysregulated in your nervous system. First of all, there's this urgency, right? I'm already behind. There's so much to do today. There's not enough time. There's not enough help. Like, how am I going to get it all done? And that urgency doesn't feel safe to our nervous system. It's like, we're already behind. Someone's going to get upset. We're going to drop the ball somewhere, right? And that sends us into fight or flight. The second thing, and I think this is just as big, is that chronic busyness leaves us no room for rest, no room for reflection, no room to feel anything, process any emotions, check in with our body. We're literally training our nervous system to be in a constant, on state, right? Foot's always on the gas pedal. And guys, if we do that long enough, and many of us have been running that pattern for months, years, dare I say decades. That was me when I hit rock bottom, right? I had been running jam-packed calendar 24/7 for a long time. It leads to burnout. It leads to a worsening of our anxiety and a sense that we just can't get caught up, right? There's always something else. It's like, well, I just need to get through this week. This week's insane. And then sure enough, Sunday night rolls around and I look at the next week and I'm like, oh, next week's insane too, right? So what do we do, right? How do we put some boundaries? How do we be intentional about setting some parameters around this coping mechanism? And I think the biggest thing, you guys, is get intentional about scheduling in white space. You've got to have margin in your calendar, right? Can you plan 10, 15, 30 minutes of white space between major tasks or major appointments in your calendar, right? Can you block off days or weeks? I started doing this. The third week of every month is completely blocked off in my calendar. I teach my group program, Burnout Recovery Blueprint, on Thursday for an hour. But other than that, the third week of every month, I don't do any one-on-one coaching sessions. I don't record any podcast with guests. Like I don't have any guest interviews. I don't take any meetings. I have a week where I can just work on my things on my schedule, get caught up, right? Sit down and work on my business instead of working in my business. It's not that that time is not used well. It's that I'm not sitting down and jumping quickly from one thing to the next and feeling behind. I have a whole week to help myself get caught up and organized so I can be intentional for the next 3 weeks until my blank week comes up again. Maybe you can't do that in your day-to-day, but I promise you can schedule in more white space, right? Can you schedule in 20 minutes before and after your lunch? Can you schedule in 15 minutes right when you get to the office or sit down at your desk to just kind of breathe and plan your day out so you're not booked back to back, right? Can you go now through the rest of the quarter or the rest of, until the end of the summer or through the end of the year and take, maybe once a month you block off a Friday where you have not a 3-day weekend necessarily, but you have a day that's blocked off where you're working, but you're getting caught up instead of just being in back-to-back stuff that's making you feel like you're further behind, right? I think that can be really helpful. And just the reminder, I think, like, guys, being busy can feel safe, but if we never truly slow down, we're not teaching our nervous system how to recover, and that undermines resilience. So that's the first one. The second way that you might be coping with stress that's actually making you less resilient is that you might have a very rigid routine, right? And we can understand why we might do this. This was me for a long time also, pretty much before I had kids. And then, I just had to learn how to become more flexible. Routines give us predictability. Predictability is safety to our nervous system, right? They're one and the same. If something is predictable, if I know it, right? If it is familiar, it is safe. When we're feeling overwhelmed, having a strict schedule, right? I wake up with my alarm at this exact time, and then this is the first thing I do, and then I get my workout, and then I eat the same thing, and then I take the kids to school, and then I get home, and I do the same thing every day, and then, the same meal plan, the same whatever workout routine. It can reduce decision fatigue too, which is real. But the biggest thing I think is that predictability gives us a sense of safety. However, everything in moderation, right? Because yes, while routines can anchor us, especially when, life happens, and they can help us feel like we're in control, and they can reduce the mental load, and they can make sure important stuff gets done, right? All of these super awesome, super important, nothing wrong with that. However, when our routines become too rigid, if you have taken my personality pattern quiz and you are the rigid personality, I am the rigid personality, it's really hard to adapt to life's curveballs because life just doesn't work like that. We can't put it into these neat little categories. We don't have the same energy every day. We don't have the same motivation every day. Our body needs different things, right? If we're up with a sick kid all night long, why are we waking up at 5 a.m. to get to the gym to do a high intensity workout? Like, that is actually not healthy for our body. If our routine is thrown off, right, it can trigger this big time anxiety or meltdown if we don't have the right mindset and we're stuck kind of in this rigid routine, right? Then our routine is no longer a tool, but it kind of becomes this crutch, keeping our nervous system from learning how to adapt, learning how to be flexible. And when it comes to this kind of like balance, if you will, between being really rigid or being flexible, I like to think of a palm tree. And maybe this analogy will be helpful for someone out there. But when we were in Miami, my office faced our front yard, and right in front of my office window, I had these beautiful palm trees. And I would look at them, and these things were like so grounded, right? Like when I went and walked around these palm trees, I could see the network of roots that was holding this palm tree in place, right? And the roots spread wide. Like, this tree was so well grounded. And at the same time, it was literally built and created to withstand hurricane force winds, meaning while it was very well grounded, it also had the ability to kind of sway and lean and be flexible. And that's how I kind of like to think about my routines, right? Like, yes, I want to have routines that are helpful. I want to be disciplined, so I'm not always relying on motivation. I want to have intention in my days. I want to follow a cadence that serves me and energizes me and makes me feel grounded. And I understand that within that, weaving in flexibility, being adaptable, being able to pivot without it dysregulating me is a superpower. It is a tool that I want to be able to have, right? So keep that in mind, and then allow yourself these micro flexes, right? Just to teach your nervous system, like, hey, we can get off our rigid routine and life is going to be okay, right? The wheels are not going to come off the wagon, and we can get back on our routine tomorrow. This is not catastrophic, right? So a small improvise here and there, maybe go off your routine, check in with your body, see if you need a different exercise routine today, if you need to eat something different today, if you need to take a nap today when you never take naps because you feel like you don't have time for them, right? It might feel uncomfortable. It probably will, but that's the point, right? Is stretching that zone of discomfort and teaching your body like, holy crap, we didn't die. This is okay. We can do this again, right? That, my friends, is how we build resilience, right? Mental and emotional flexibility. All right. Strategy number 3, the third way that we might be coping with stress that's actually making you less resilient, is that you are probably constantly stimulated, right? Maybe you always have the TV or podcast or music or something playing in the background. And we do that because, again, it comes down to distraction, right? Noise can be comforting. Maybe silence is like uneasy for you. It's like, this is like so uncomfortable, right? You're like trying to multitask. I'm going to listen to this podcast while I do this. I'm going to watch this show, catch up on my shows while I do this. Or you just don't like the feeling of being with your own company, and you like the company of like having friends playing in the background or background chatter or what have you. And it serves as a great distraction, guys. It distracts us from things that make us anxious or things that we worry about, or it brings a sense of like companionship if we're feeling lonely. Sometimes I just feel like I have to be always learning something, which I know that happens to me when I'm dysregulated. I'm like, I'm like wasting time. I can't like get out of the shower and do my makeup without listening to a podcast and learning something. It's like, chill, girl. Yes, you can. It's actually what your brain probably needs right now, because constant noise means that your nervous system never gets a chance to settle. And if you are in a similar season to me, where there's a lot of people in your house and there's little people who are quite noisy, you are already being inundated with noise and sounds and requests and like snacks and food and all the things, right? Your nervous system needs stillness. you can't always be processing all this extra stimuli, and it's preventing you from listening to your body, right? Checking in with your body signals, slowing down enough to be like, wow, did I hydrate today? Did I nourish my body today? Wow, I've had to go to the bathroom for the last 3 hours and I've been ignoring that. I'm going to go to the bathroom, right? Or whatever it is. Like, if you can't handle silence, it probably means that your stress or your discomfort is just like trying to be drowned out. So what can we do, right? How can we be more intentional with this? I think it's really important to just start to designate like a low stim zone or no noise zone or time in your day, right? I know for me, especially when I was working out of the house, when I was practicing law in an office, and I was just like helping people all day long with their drama-rama, right? And it's like I was in an office that had overhead fluorescent lighting, and the phone was ringing all day long, and the emails were coming into the inbox faster than I could respond to them. And like when I got home, whatever it was, 5, 6 p.m., I went through my house, and like my husband had probably been home at this time, and he's like listening to music while watching Sports Center. And I'm like, hey, no. And I went through and I would just like close the blinds, dim the lights, turn off the TVs, put like instrumental calming music on, and just let the stimulation rest for a moment, right? And maybe you guys can incorporate something like that in your day. Maybe it's like, okay, when we sit down for dinner, all the devices are off, for the rest of the day, or we're going to make sure that we just play calming music while we make dinner, or after, 8 p.m., all the screens are away and the phones are all off. And, I listen to instrumental music while I take a bath or a shower, right? With dimmed lights or candlelight, and I do some breathing or some journaling or whatever it is. You don't have to get fancy with this. I'm just saying, make sure that you have time built into your day where you are not being overstimulated by all the noise and the lights and the sounds and all the things, right? And I promise you, it's probably going to feel awkward at first, but you're going to survive. And that's kind of the theme today, right? Learning to teach our nervous system that it's okay to kind of remove some of these coping mechanisms that are no longer serving us, and that we can introduce some boundaries and parameters around those that will serve us better in the long run. All right. And then strategy number 4. And this is one I've kind of alluded to. And here it is. High intensity exercise as your go-to, as your MO, right? Maybe you love, like, you feel anxious all morning until you get to your HIIT class, or you feel anxious and kind of overwhelmed all day long until you go run those 6 miles, and then you feel like on top of the world. Don't get me wrong, right? Exercise is a great mood booster. For many of us, it feels, myself included, like it's the only time I actually stop thinking, right? The endorphins are real. And when we talk about HIIT workouts, in particular, high intensity interval workouts, yes, they can help us discharge pent up energy. Yes, they can be cathartic. Yes, they can help us discharge frustration, but they can also keep us physically healthy when done in moderation. Hear me on this, because if you are already on the edge of what your body can handle when it comes to stress, if you are already near capacity in your nervous system, you're already living a very stressful life, intense exercise being your only coping mechanism or your favorite coping mechanism might be reinforcing a stress loop. Because here's the thing, your body does not do a good job differentiating between quote unquote bad stress and like quote unquote good stress, right? So like stress at work versus a really stressful exercise routine. Your body just knows stress. It doesn't know good stress or bad stress. So when you engage in high intensity exercise, at its core, guys, that's stress on your body. Okay. When your body responds to that in the same way it would respond to, like, I don't know, a really intense deadline at work or being chased by a lion in the safari. Okay. Stress is stress. High intensity workouts do the same thing to your body as those other kinds of stress. They elevate your cortisol, especially if you're already stressed out. And when we're doing high intensity workouts 5 days a week over time, It leads to overtraining, right? It can lead cortisol pumping through your body, insomnia, hormone imbalances, and it undermines your resilience instead of building it. So how can you put some boundaries and parameters around that? Y'all, if you are already feeling high stress, spending more time in those higher activation states, right? If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling what have you, gentle movement is your nervous system's best friend until you learn how to clear out and release a lot of that energy and make more space for a more intense workout. Okay. So maybe just start out like alternating, right? Alternate between your high intensity days and your lower intensity days. So it's like, yeah, maybe someday you're running sprints or going to CrossFit or doing a HIIT workout. And then the next day you're doing Pilates or just going for a walk outside, right? And I shouldn't say just going for a walk because that's one of the best things you can do for your nervous system, especially if you can get outside. And that variation really trains your nervous system to like, hey, I can learn how to go up, like rev up. And then I can also learn how to cool down effectively, boosting my overall stress resilience. That's the name of the game. I want to learn how to go up, but I want to learn how to come down. I don't want to get stuck up. And then check your motivation. And this was a big one for me. Like I subconsciously felt like if I was not training really hard, I was wasting my time, lazy, unmotivated, undisciplined. I don't know who I was trying to impress. Like when I think back, I'm like, that's so dumb. But I know that's what was driving a lot of it for me. And maybe you're different. But I was working out super intensely. I don't know who I was trying to prove what to. But I felt good right after. And then, come 1, 2, 3 p.m., I felt drained. I felt irritable. I felt more tired than energized. And that was a signal to me that I didn't realize that it was time to dial my workouts down, right? Lower the intensity because you're already under a ton of stress, Michelle. And this is actually just increasing the cortisol pumping through your body. And it's exhausting you in the long run. So yes, movement, number one way to balance your nervous system. Fantastic for your mental health. And it requires balance here and gentleness, okay? Balancing high intensity workouts with restorative activities, or if you're already feeling super activated, man, just dial it down, right? Can you take a couple weeks off of your super high intensity workouts and go for walks outside instead? And just notice, right? Notice what that does for your nervous system overall. Are you having more sustained energy throughout the day, right? Are you feeling less overwhelmed? Are you feeling less anxious? Because the truth of the matter is you're going to have less cortisol pumping through your body. Okay. All right. So there you have it. 4 coping strategies that so many of us rely on that honestly, if we're being real, can turn into these crutches, right? If we're not being careful. So number 1 was a jam-packed schedule. Number 2, super rigid routine. Number 3, having constant background noise. And then number 4, opting for high intensity exercise as your go-to, right? Now, don't get me wrong. All of these have their place and time, right? In short bursts, none of these are problematic. However, if you've been feeling stuck, anxious, burnt out, I think it's worth asking ourselves, like, am I leaning on these habits too heavily? Okay. All right. So where do you go from here? Pick one strategy that you know you're relying on that is no longer serving you, right? And start small. Maybe it's starting a schedule and a short break in your day. Maybe it's leaving an hour of quiet in the morning before you pick up your phone and check your emails. Maybe it's, this week you're going to switch your high intensity workouts for going for a walk outside instead, right? And then again, it all comes back to awareness and noticing what seems to be best for your nervous system. How does your body respond to this new thing? Does it resist it at first? Probably. And that's okay. And that's to be expected because it's new and it's unfamiliar. I promise you, if you push through that over time, you'll see that your nervous system adapts and that you'll learn to use these small pockets of newness, of uncertainty, of new ways of coping as non-life threatening, and you'll adapt and it will be so beneficial for your nervous system. Okay. If you want more guidance, if you want to work on truly building a resilient nervous system, if you haven't yet, you can go ahead and download my nervous system reset guide in the show notes. It's free. I don't even know how many pages it is. I think it's like 27 pages. It's full of bite-sized information and exercises that you can start to integrate into your real life, you guys. So you don't have to rely on these coping mechanisms that are, at the end of the day, they're draining, right? If we've been relying on them too long. All right, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in today. If this episode was helpful, if it made you think of someone else who's also running these coping mechanisms, feel free to share it with a friend, post about it on Instagram. I just love seeing your feedback, and your insight. And I think the reminder today, the takeaway is that true resilience, you guys, isn't just about having the perfect routine or getting all the things done or being super productive or, whatever it is. It's about flexibility. It really is. And it's about awareness and it's about consciousness and knowing that your body can handle what life throws at you. And you can always tweak how you're handling stress, how you're managing stress, because what do I always say? Life's going to keep on lifing, right? It's going to keep on coming at you. So you want to be refining the ways in which you manage and handle stress, so that those coping mechanisms are serving you well in this season of life. All right, my friends, I love y'all so much. I'll talk to you soon.
If you love Mommy's Podcast, leave a review.
If you enjoyed this episode, it would be so awesome if you could take a moment to subscribe and rate the podcast. And if you have just a few more seconds to leave a quick review, they really help to get this podcast out to other moms like you. I read every last review, and trust me, when it's late at night or early in the morning before my kids get up and I'm working on bringing you all of this content, your reviews are what keep me going. Leaving a review is truly the best way you can thank me. And of course, DM me on Instagram. I love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to another episode. Head over to the show notes for this episode and all past episodes at michellegrosser.com, where you'll find free resources and more ways to connect with me. If you love the show, share it with a friend. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.